Julius Caesar was a brilliant military strategist. When he wanted to communicate a message to his field generals in other parts of Europe, he would send a message to each one, but doing so carries the risk of getting jumped and the message getting exposed. To avoid that, Caesar's idea was, instead of using the letters of the alphabet in the order as everybody would expect, why not shift the letters of the alphabet by 3 so that A becomes C, B becomes D, etc. For example, if the messages come back, he would write this gibberish. So if someone manages to get their hand on a message, they won't be able to understand it. The messenger doesn't even need to know about the shift, only the field generals do. So basically, Caesar encrypts his message and the generals decrypt it. The science of encrypting and decrypting is what is called cryptography, which basically means secret writing. Cryptography was used to make cryptocurrencies possible. But before we get to that, let's see how cryptography is used today to exchange information. In the old days, if Bob wanted to encrypt a message and send it to Alice, they would both have to have a copy of the same key, a key that would both encrypt and decrypt. He would encrypt the message and send it to her. Alice has a copy of the key. She can decrypt the message with it. It's obvious this method carries the risk of someone stealing the key or making a copy of it and having their way with the message. It was very unsafe to use one key, and so one of the innovations that came along was this idea of splitting the key into a public key and private key. Every public key matches to only one private key. Together, they are used to encrypt and decrypt messages. If you encrypt a message using a person's public key, they can only decrypt it using their matching private key. Let's see an example. Bob wants to send Alice an encrypted email. To do this, Bob takes Alice's public key and encrypts the message to her. When Alice receives the message, she takes her private key that is known only to her in order to decrypt the message from Bob. There is only one problem with this method. How can Alice know that the message came from Bob? Since Alice's public key is indeed public, anyone can take it, encrypt a message to her, and pretend to be Bob. Alice needs to see Bob's unique signature, and this is where hashing comes into play. Hashing is using math to transform any kind of data of any size to a fixed and unique series number. We call this number the hash output. If you take our earlier example text message, come back and hash it, it will give you a number that looks like this. You or anyone could perform the same hashing as many times as you want. You will always get the same number. However, if you change anything about the text message, you will get a completely different number. Another important thing about hashing is that it's one way. You can hash this text message and get this hash output, but you can never reverse it. It's impossible to figure out the text message come back from the hash output. It's a one-way hash. So Bob will create a digital signature by hashing his private key. His private key won't be compromised because it's a one-way hash. When Alice receives the message from Bob, she can verify the digital signature on the message that came from Bob by using his public key. Remember we said that each private key matches to only one public key. As the digital signature uses Bob's private key, Bob is the only person who could create this signature. Let's see what happens in details. Bob hashes the message with his private key to create a signature /hash output, then put in a file along with the message, and finally encrypt the file with Alice's public key and send it to her. Alice decrypts the file with her private key. Now she has the signature and the message. Alice takes the message and hashes it with Bob's public key. That means she will create a hash output signature. Basically, performs the same hashing as Bob but with his public key. Alice now can compare both signatures. If they match, that means the signature is valid and the message indeed came from Bob. If they don't match, it either means that a different key was used to sign it or that the data has been altered. Now let's see how public key encryption and one-way hash function is used with cryptocurrencies. Every cryptocurrency holder has a crypto wallet, and each crypto wallet has one private and one public key. Public key is like your bank account number. You can share it with other people or institutions so they can send money to you. Your public key is referred to as your wallet address, and this is, by the way, my personal wallet address. Private key, on the other hand, is like your bank account password or the PIN to your debit card. You would not want to give that to anyone because that would give them access to your account. Unlike a normal wallet, which can hold actual cash, crypto wallets technically don't store your cryptocurrencies. Your holdings live on the blockchain, but can only be accessed using your private key. Your private key proves your ownership of your digital money that lives on the blockchain and allow you to make transactions. If you lose your private key, you lose your access to your money. That's why it's very important to keep your wallet private key safe. If Bob said he gave Alice $10, normally we need a third party like the bank to verify that Bob exists, that he has funds and all that. Cryptography made us trust the computers. We no longer need a third party. Let's say Alice and Bob wants to exchange some Bitcoin. Alice has created her Bitcoin wallet and she is now ready to receive funds. Her wallet application randomly generates a private key together with a public key, which is her wallet address. At this point, her wallet address is not known to the Bitcoin network. Until somebody sends her money, nobody knows she exists. Once she receives some money, her address becomes part of the Bitcoin network, and Alice can now check her balance on the Bitcoin blockchain using her private key. Bob wants to send Alice some Bitcoin. Bob already got some funds on his wallet, which means that his wallet address is registered on the Bitcoin blockchain. Bob will simply open his wallet, type in Alice's address / public key, enter the amount he wants to send her, and then click send. Now Bob's gotta be very careful. If he makes a mistake and enters the wrong amount or the wrong address, there is no going back. By clicking send, Bob signs the transaction with his private key. But before he initiates the transaction, he must select an amount of money as transaction fees. This tells the Bitcoin network that Bob wants to make a transaction and is willing to pay whoever is gonna validate that transaction. Those who validate the transactions are called the miners. The miners are basically the bankers of Bitcoin. They validate the transaction and get the transaction fees in exchange. This system is called proof of work and is specific to Bitcoin. Other currencies use other systems. The miners basically validate the transaction the same way Alice validates the digital signature of the email she received from Bob. Once the transaction is validated, it's put on the blockchain and will remain there forever. There are many things you can do with public key cryptography besides exchanging messages or money. You can use public key cryptography to log into websites instead of having to remember passwords or entrusting them to Google or other platforms that could be hacked anytime. This concept is called web botnet. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video.